safety and pleasure go hand in hand. We can't talk about one without the other. We have to begin with what does safety feel like in the body and how do we cultivate that? And then how do we also deal with what tools do we need to deal with what comes up when I slow down enough to create safety in the body? Just this barrage of, it's kind of like a giant tsunami hits them of everything they've never allowed themselves to feel or the things that have been pushed away.
Welcome to Safe to Love. We are on a mission to help the world believe in love again and give you the courage to find it. And today is a very special episode. And actually, I'm just going to acknowledge at the beginning of the episode that as Jen and I were talking last night, that a big, huge process has come up for me around the topic of sacred sexuality, sexual expression, the divine feminine, polarity, consent, all of these beautiful topics of which she has so much wisdom. And so I just want to acknowledge and demonstrate and model that I can hold sadness and grief and still be in this beautiful power conversation and taking care of myself emotionally when I need to, and also letting down the masks of perfection, of just showing up as I am, which is a little tender and raw today. So I met Jen actually at a DRIPP class, and it was this beautiful class about anger and letting yourself feel anger and what does your body want to express as anger. And our friend Adrienne, who's also going to be on the show, introduced us and said, you have to have Jen on your show. And then I started following her on Instagram and I was like, yes, queen, let's get her on. So without further ado, Jennifer Holland is here. Yay. And I'll just let her introduce and share. She has so much wealth of information and we only have an hour. So we'll just let her share what it feels on her heart ready to share today about yourself.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And hi, everyone. Thanks for being here with us. And what do I want to say about me? I think what I want to share is that my purpose on this planet, and it keeps getting clearer to me, is to really help people come back home to themselves and their bodies and to remember the deep wisdom that lives in the body and to be in their deep joy in their gifts and in their genius. And for us to get there, we have to unlayer so much. A lot of us have so much harm and so much what I call armor that is trapped physically, mentally, and energetically in the body. And how do we hold that tenderly? How do we create a language of gentleness and ease? And how do we unravel these things with patience and perseverance and then show up in devotion to that over and over again? Because more and more I find our culture is just, we want to excavate. We want to we want to solve something. We want to create a solution. We want to be healed. And it's all an evolution. There is no end point. And slowing down is the way to get there more impactfully, more holistically, and we can't leave out any part of that, which is why I think I found myself in these realms of sacred sexuality and intimacy, because as I support people, I'm listening. I'm listening to see where they're feeling left behind, where they're feeling like they don't have the tools or the knowledge or the information, or even, they didn't have any good patterns. They didn't have anyone teaching them about these things. So here I am, just ready to rip it all, rip all of like the shame and the tabooness out of it and just be like, let's talk about this and let's break ourselves open to one of the most powerful pathways on this planet, at least that I've come across, and that is holding our deep sensual and pleasure power almost at the forefront. And so I would say everything in my work that I do is under that banner. And I consider myself a deep somatic coach. Everything I do has an invitation to feel through the body, because that's how we actually know. I feel like knowledge is an embodied state where intelligence kind of live in the mind, and deep knowledge is like this like deeply embodied place. And we have to practice and we have to do it. And we have to like actually show up and be embodied in it to really allow not only the synapses of the brain to rewire, but then like our whole cellular being becoming like anew. And
Yeah, I love that. I'm so excited to bring this topic because I did hair for 20 years and working with so many women. And the reason I got out of doing hair and got into coaching, transformational coaching is I started to see so many women sit in my chair who couldn't even look at themselves in the mirror. They didn't want to look at themselves in the eye. They were like, turn me away from the chair. And they were living in struggle and survival, but also in dominance and force. And that's something that you and I were talking about earlier that really resonated with me is in this world of control and letting the wild feminine be chaotic and how uncomfortable and wrong that feels, but how much that's limiting our voice and our expression. And what's needed right now in the world is for so many women to find their voice, to use their voice, to find their embodied no, to not betray themselves, to not betray their body, because it's causing disease, it's causing depression, it's causing alcoholism. We have a huge porn addiction. We have a huge drug addiction. We have high rates of cancer and suicide. And we're one of the richest countries in the world. And in my learning of Tantra over the last 3 years, I have found it very interesting that pleasure is harder for me to hold than pain or sadness or grief. It feels more scary for a lot of women. And so can you talk a little bit about the women that you've worked with, maybe some of your own processes of like how you've seen that control cause disease in the body?
Wow. Yeah, that's a deep one. Let's see, where to begin with that. I think I'm going to begin with what I see coming to me and then like how we journey through that and into it. And it doesn't surprise me, I think, where we're at culturally. So many of us have been on the receiving end of a lot of harm and violence, and that inevitably will close down our structures of feeling safe. And for me, safety and pleasure go hand in hand. We can't talk about one without the other. And so we have to begin with what does safety feel like in the body, and how do we cultivate that? And then how do we also deal with what tools do we need to deal with what comes up when I slow down enough to create safety in the body? And that's usually, I think, where most people kind of get hung up is suddenly when they slow down enough, just this like barrage of, it's kind of like a giant tsunami hits them of everything they've never allowed themselves to feel or the things that have been pushed away. And it's, to no fault of anyone, this is a kind of a cultural problem that we're butting heads with right now of decades and now generations of this repression that's been happening. So our pleasure feels so distant from us, and our pleasure feels wrong. Our pleasure feels dangerous. And so, of course, we're not going to be like, woo, my pleasure, and just like be able to turn it on right away. And so I feel like teaching, again, how do we create safety in the body? How do we create a safe space in our home? Then that continues to ripple out. How do we choose safe people to be around us who can hold us in these ways? And what are my emotional tools? The emotional tools of now when I'm actually having a feeling versus emotional tools of a trigger of I'm feeling it now, but this is something that happened to me previously and I need to deal with it now. And having those types of things, which is why I think I love DRIPP, my methodology, because it brings together breath work and touch, which like if you're into EFT tapping or any kind of thing that's like helping the body literally resonate into your nervous system. And, so touch is so powerful. And then we're just going to have like gentle movement. And then the movement is, I think, where people start to reclaim pleasure because that brings an awareness into how much sensation is in the body at all times, but most of us are numb and most of us are dissociated from that, or we go in and out of patterns of freeze and dissociation and all those things where we're not allowing ourselves to feel that way. So, which is why what you brought up, why it does cause so much disease. When we are shutting off any part of ourself, in my opinion, especially something so energetically powerful. Like I'm always like, pleasure is our fucking birthright. And feeling good is why we're here. And yes, life is difficult and we're going to come into challenges and we're going to be uncomfortable. And those are all parts of the duality of life, of where it wouldn't be so sweet if we didn't have like the salty and the bitter and all of the other tastes of life. But when we're separating things and we don't allow ourselves to be our fully expressed selves, of course that's going to cause dis-ease, because that's imbalance. And in anything in nature, when there's an imbalance, like something's going to go wrong. And so how do we notice these things and understand that our health is holistic, our energy, like we have to look at every single facet of these things. And to me, the umbrella of what kind of captures all of that is the art of slowing down, and is the art of tuning into presence and unlocking and unlayering, again, like what is available to us. It's been such a profound journey teaching people how to do this, because I usually start people with like touching their faces or giving themselves a scalp massage. And I've had numerous amounts of people after class, especially if there's first ones, be like, why have I never touched myself like this? And I think I had the same question when I arrived at this practice. Like I was shattered in my life, and was finding this like really beautiful, nurturing way of just like holding my face and like holding myself. And I was just like, whoa, like no one's ever taught me that I can do this for me, and that I can feel so good and so satisfied and so nurtured and so loved by my own touch. And then it's like really pleasurable as well. And so again, I think to answer your question in this moment is, how do we create like that parallel pathway of deep resonant safety in the nervous system, and then bringing touch back in so that we can rewire pleasure and touch in a safe space. And that kind of is going to help all of that armor that was created when our pleasure wasn't those things.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, I have noticed, they used to just practice havening, and it's just like you brush breadcrumbs off of your face. And whenever I do it with my clients, they're like, oh, that feels so good to just like touch your face. Like even right now, I'm feeling like more calm in the conversation, more calm in like the experience of like needing to know what to say, and just being present with like, it doesn't matter. There's nothing to say. It's just like a conversation. And we were talking about specifically for single women who maybe have relied on men to be their masculine container, and then maybe they're stuck in an unhappy marriage and they're like wanting to get out, or maybe they haven't ever gotten married and they like feel like, who's going to help me hold all of this chaos? Like I have to be in my masculine, like I see so many women that have been single for a long time that like are so much in their masculine because feel like they've had to hold that. And when you and I were talking, we kind of talked about doming yourself and being a dom daddy, which I really love so much more than like reparenting yourself. I don't know. It just like felt better for me than me trying to like, because I think it also just helps me feel like more in my adult. Because when I think about like being a dad to myself, sometimes then it makes me feel more like a little kid that's getting into trouble. Whereas if I'm just like dom daddying myself, something like kinky and sexual about it, that I'm like, ooh, I'm going to like just dom myself into doing this. Like, how did you come into that? What was your experience with that, and how has that helped you in your life?
That's definitely developed over time. And I'm just such a seeker of different philosophies and knowledge that I think I try so many different things on, and then I'm like, ooh, that one. Like I love that one. And I hear you. I think inner child work's really beautiful, but it's interesting because inner child work and reparenting to me are very similar. And when I'm doing inner child work, my now self is often the one that's like showing up for my younger self. I don't do a lot of caretaker visualizations of like traumatic moments in my childhood. It's always me coming to me and validating my younger self. And so in the lens of daily life of who I'm a woman now, like, hell yeah, I love that language. I started using daddy for all of my male friends over the past couple of years. They love it. And to me, daddy energy is this like deep caretaker, deep provider. Yes, like a very soft, loving capacity to hold me in all of my chaos and my bigness and my everythingness. And also this like sternness. And because I'm a little bratty submissive in my in my bedroom life, it makes so much sense to me to have that attitude towards myself. and to make it kinky and just be like, and to not really shame myself, but just be like, ooh, I'm such a naughty, nasty, like kinky girl. Like I love it this way. And so my inner daddy gets to come online and just be like, yeah, bitch, go do this thing now. And I'm like, almost turn myself on by being like the good girl to my own inner daddy reality. This may have started, I'm going to share the book Existential Kink, and I can't remember, her name's Catherine something, psychologist. Highly recommend. She brought me that lens years ago, and I've been trying it on for a long, long time. I even, to this point, I try to live a very erotic daily life, so I bring kink into almost all of my lenses. And like if something like pulls my hair, like the seatbelt, like my hair gets caught, I'm just like, ooh, you kinky car. Like, and it's just made me like, anger isn't really a part of my human experience when just weird shit happens. It's uncomfortable. I just turn it kinky. And I'm just like, ooh, God knows I like it rough. So clearly today I had a little hair pull in me, and then everything just is like more of this cosmic joke. And that levity, this is like, to me, pleasure is levity. And so having this dom daddy, this inner daddy that like puts you in your place and shows up for you and is just like, yeah, I know you want to lay in bed all day, or I know you want to be in your deep feminine chaos and in your emotionality, but like you being unfed is actually going to like make that worse. So my inner daddy's just like, go make a meal or go ask for someone to make you a meal or whatever it is, and has really brought me into the accountability of what I consider my more linear side. And I've been coaching humans in many different capacities, and I consider myself almost an efficiency coach, an efficiency and expansion coach. So how do we live our biggest, boldest selves, the quickest, the easiest, and with like the least friction? And so, yeah, I work with a lot of people about this, their inner duality. And I think with a lot of people, if you are kinky in any way, this could be it. I mean, it could be your dom mommy, okay? Like I have a very like dom mom vibe in my coaching. So whatever, you're looking for to help you with the thing that maybe isn't naturally in you. So for me, I consider myself a very feminine woman. My masculine energy is something I've worked on to really create in a healthy way. I had to work on both, honestly. I had to work on my feminine as well. And what does that mean to be healthy chaos, not destructive chaos? To me, that's the feminine. And the masculine is, how do I become dominant but without force? How do I actually like take a hold of my life and find that linear path of showing the fuck up when I need to, even if I don't want to. Actually, that's especially when I need to show up, right? Is like when I don't want to. So I work a lot with this inner duality. So whichever one you feel like is your primary. So for me, I had to start with my feminine and to really ask, what does that mean? What does feminine energy mean? What does it mean for me singly? Because I think this is a unique journey. How do I want to express myself as a woman? How do I want to integrate my feminine? How do I want to play with her out in the world? And how do I create enough safety in my body that she is online? Because again, these things are interlaced. Our creative energy, our sexual energy, our sensual energy will not be online if we are in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state, if we are in a state of survival. So as we find anchoredness and support and safety in the body, then kind of naturally everything comes online. So once you realize that your feminine energy is important and your pleasure is important and you need to be in that energy, then there's going to be a moment that you're like, I need to go to work I need to go work on my inner daddy or my inner masculine. And so for me, that came online 3 or 4 years ago. And for those of you that are like, ooh, yeah, I want to do that. Same thing, start to hold, like, what does it mean? What does your masculine energy mean to you? How do you like to be in that energy? What does it feel like to be expressed in that way? And how do you start showing up for yourself? And to me, a lot of it is I call it the maintenance man energy. It's the stuff that we all have to do. It's the maintenance of life. You got to go take your car in to get it, service once in a while. You got to go grocery shopping. You got to like, I'm a cleanliness is godliness kind of gal, like once a week, are you like upkeeping your home to upkeep your inner energy? I think all of these things are so interrelated, like how we represent our outer life, our inner life, and getting into, I think ritual comes into play with inner daddy work and devoting to this no matter how you feel. And it feels a lot like devotion to a dom. And I love that energy. Like I love pleasing my dom. I love pleasing and showing up in a way that makes them happy. And I only trust a dom in my life because he's a healthy man and a healthy dom who I know is like giving me what I need sometimes even if it's not what I think I want. And so that energy of, okay, baby girl, like, that's nice you want to do this, but like you've got to go do this now. And yeah, it's been really fun in that way. And it's also been fun to hold that standard because I feel like I'm such a great daddy to myself. I was telling you this before, that it's really raised the bar for who I allow into my inner circle and who I would ever consider being in partnership with. Like, you better daddy me better than I daddy me. And I think that's how we all should be feeling. Like, and I feel like this could be a similar conversation for men. Like, how does it actually feel to be devoted to this energy? If it's mother energy that works for you, or, you know, maybe it's all like you can play with a submissive tone, you know, if you feel like you're a more dominant creature, like what language and what dynamic helps inspire you to find playfulness in this dynamic of like, we have to do this shit.
Yeah.
And like, we might as well have a good time doing it.
Yeah. I love that. And we talked too about, you know, speaking of the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, like so many women are patterned in our bodies to be small, to be quiet, to not want to be a burden, to not want to take up space. So when you start to do that, it feels really uncomfortable. And for me, it used to be fawning response. And so I would just people please. And I actually used to think that I was a very laid back, easygoing person. And then I realized the last 5 years, I'm like, oh no, I'm not easygoing. I'm actually really high maintenance, and that's okay. And I'm a lot, but I give a lot as well. And I'm happy to give it to myself, you know? But we talked about pleasing and the difference of pleasing a man, which I feel like so many women like come into, and especially like my partner Chad will run into this a lot, where so many women are trying to fix their men and trying to be like, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. Like, you need to do healing in my way. And then like the men are pleasing the women also right now, which is a very interesting dynamic, you know, like, oh, I want to sign up for this men's class, but my wife won't let me, but you know, she signed me up for this other class I have to take. And it's like, well, what do you want to do? You know, what is your devotion to yourself? And so can you talk a little bit about the difference between pleasing a partner and being devoted to a partner?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, I feel like, and I think that was the first time I ever said that was today with you. So I'm like, this is kind of coming online. So I'll do my best to explain what I think I mean by all of this. And to me, the word pleasing, and especially I deeply struggle still a little bit with people pleasing. Pleasing to me has a tone of mask wearing. Pleasing is, I'm trying to be the person that this other person has, almost like a dream, like it's a projection of who they want. And what's interesting is sometimes I think when we actually sit down and talk to people, that's not at all what they want. But again, it's all these, our own stories we're telling ourselves of, oh, my partner, oh, this man, I need to be this way to please him. So to me, pleasing energy already is kind of like taking me outside of myself. So in general, instead of being like, I'm going to please myself, and again, this is getting nuanced because I think we could like reclaim the word pleasure, or maybe we need a different word, because there's like embodied pleasure, which is like a deep sensory experience of my nerve endings and of being a human in this biological meat suit. And then there's like people pleasing, which again is, maybe I'll just call it people pleasing from here on out. So that's me trying to assume what it is that you want me to be. And that's just stripping all of your autonomy and your authenticity out of that. And so if we truly want to be in love with ourselves and in love with other people, like true healthy love, that's going to be based in deep authenticity and deep expression of what feels aligned to us. And then having the bravery to be out in the world, knowing that at any point, someone could choose to no longer engage with that if that no longer was in alignment with them. And do I have the trust and the devotion to myself that no matter who comes in and out of my life, like I've got me. And so that's where I think the devotion to me is the pattern that then I can see out in the world of devoting to others, because my devotion doesn't look any sort of way. I'm truly listening. I'm listening to my own body. I'm listening to the people that are sitting in front of me. I really try to meet myself and everyone in my life like I don't know them every day I see them, because we're evolving so much. And I never want to assume that I know my person or my friend so well that I stop asking questions and I stop being like, how are you in this actual moment? And devotion is what is looking at my actual needs in the actual moment, and then being well-resourced enough to know kind of which medicine to provide myself. I'm always talking about how movement is medicine and sleep is medicine and intimacy is medicine, right? So what medicine is it that I actually want? And I think this maybe goes into a deeper layer of people-pleasing that I've never thought about until this moment. So we're doing this in relationship to people, but like how much are we doing this in relationship to life? How much am I lying to myself about what I'm doing is actually what I want to do, and I'm really just doing what culture wants me to do, doing what my religion or any, upbringing, your family, all these outside sources. And instead of just truly tuning in to like, who am I right now in this moment? And I can be completely different than I was 5 days ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, and what is actually true for me now. And devotion to me is also this, when I have a really beautiful balance in my masculine and feminine, I'm showing up for the things that my flighty, flowy, cyclical part of my feminine being like wants to be bratty about it and just like, I don't want to do that. But I've done it enough that I've had this balance that like the balance is what creates my capacity to be so nourished and so able to ask for what I want, so that I'm not ever coercing people to give me what I want. And I think people pleasing is kind of that.
It's very manipulative.
So manipulative and self-abandoning and self-manipulative, because you're not even allowing yourself to have the joy of being yourself. So I think how do we resource ourselves? How do we understand also deeply consent? I see everything through a consent lens these days, because it's just how do we actually engage with life in an energetically clean way? To me, consent is healthy relating. And how do I stand solid as a sovereign being and ask for what I want, and to also be able to receive a no, and to be able to caretake my own shit, but then ask for help to caretake that? How do I learn how to please myself so I actually know what I want in the bedroom when I'm in that way? And how do I just keep showing up for that day after day after day, even when it's hard, even when it doesn't go great, even when I'm stirring up the sediment of my shadow work, and it's hard and it's scary and it's sad and it's a lot. And how do I continue showing up actually more so in devotion in those moments? I think it's easy to show up in devotion when we're happy and things are good and I'm in my joy and me and my man are good or whatever it is, it's like, it's easy to do my shit then. But like, what about when you're like deep throes of grief? Yeah. Or you're hurt physically or sick or something like that? How do we actually be like, no, this is all a gift. God wants me to slow down and to come back to me and to devote to me. And so I'm just an inside out girl. I believe as within, so without. So if we don't have this capacity to meet ourselves in this, there's no fucking way we can do it with someone externally. Yeah. So the devotion really starts within. And how do we set our masks down once and for all? I think it's actually I think it's actually the perfect segue into de-armoring, honestly. Yeah. How do we not just look at like those outer masks and armor, but then also how do we hold like the deep trauma armor that may be keeping us. And this is where I always love to, when I talk to anyone, I just want to validate that like when you're struggling with things, to not beat yourself up so much. Like, and this is where you can use a little kinky lens, instead just be like, oh, you kinky bitch, you love it this way, and I have aha moments about that instead of being like, oh, you're so messy and gross right now, So how do we hold space for ourselves? How do we have grace when we're in the muck? And then how do we caretake these like outer and inner deep armor and recognize that so much of this is, in my opinion, on purpose, the way that the world works, to keep us disempowered, to keep us separate from our pleasure and our power, and to also know this is a long time and there's deep layers. So deep. So deep layers that need so much tending. And this is where the practice that I've stepped into recently is more of this deeper energetic practice of when we really feel stuck, when we're in these loops and patterns, when we're in free states just over and over again, when we do come in to like try these things, because I want to validate that you might come into this world and start to dip into it and it's just going to trigger you in a million different ways. Like the sexual path is it's the lightning path to, I think, higher states of consciousness and expansion. And it's also the spiciest, like most intense path. And it will bring everything up, all of your shame, all of your fear, all of your doubt, and see if you're willing to finally sit with it and listen to it and witness it. And so I think we're going to keep talking about devotion, because how can we just keep understanding and unlayering what does it look like and feel like to keep showing up for me, especially when it's hard and especially when I'm confused and especially when I'm feeling alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because I feel like a devotion's a word that I feel like has been coming up the last couple of years more and more. It used to be, the word was discipline. And I really still love the word discipline. It means to be a disciple of. But for me, it never resonated because it had so much judgment attached to it based on being disciplined and having a very disciplinary ex-husband who was very stoic. It's like, you just need to be more disciplined. You just need to be more disciplined. And it created so much shame. And I remember sitting about to do an ayahuasca ceremony, and it was at the beginning of the year, and we were like choosing our word. And I was like, my word is discipline. And he was like, no, that is a terrible word for you. I was like, oh. And then he's like, devotion. Try on the word devotion. And that led me through like a big Mary Magdalene quest where I went down to the caves and I had a like I was in the temple of Mary Magdalene and I was praying at her altar with Joan of Arc, who's also been like a spirit guide of mine. And I had this spontaneous healing in this church of my heart. And all she told me was, the only thing you need to do to have everything you want in your life is to just unconditionally love yourself. And right before we went on, Chad was telling me about this quote that says, joy is matriarchal. She doesn't want to be present if all of her children are not welcome at the table. And I just feel like that's what devotion is for me, is allowing all of the parts of myself to be welcomed at the table, including the shameful ones that are scared to have those higher states of consciousness through sexuality. There's so much shame. I mean, I just watched that movie, The Testament, about this woman who started this religion telling everyone they needed to be celibate. And it was like just so interesting that that's how she thought you were going to reach higher states of consciousness. And, they only have 2 believers now, a couple hundred years later. So I don't think it took on. But we were kind of also talking about the awakening of sacred sexuality and how, like, in a few years that more people are going to be reaching expanded states of consciousness through sacred sexuality than plant medicine or breath. I mean, actually, sacred sexuality and Tantra does include a lot of breath work, like a lot of breath movement and sound. And I would just love to hear what you think about where sexuality is going, and including your de-armoring, because it's what you were telling me is last time you were in town in Utah that you were so booked up. Like, you learned how to do this yoni de-armoring, took this class. And this is like the 3rd time I had heard about it too. I had heard about it from this other person and then this other person. And then my friend Adrian's like, you got to have her on. She does yoni de-armoring. And I was like, that's so strange. I'd never heard of it before. And now,
and now here we are.
But like, you were so busy. You had all these women like booking to be like, and for me, what came up with that is, but we have our armor for a reason, because the world is a very unsafe place for women still, and a lot of women speaking up, and a lot of things, they're getting like hate emails and hate crimes and like all these things happening, which is like what part of is, I guess that's where we need the village. I know I'm not really asking like a coherent question, so thanks for being in my feminine, nonlinear question.
I'm with you
here. So yeah, I'll let you speak up.
Yeah. Wow. Where did I want to begin with that? So there was a thought I had when you were speaking about devotion, and don't worry, I'll weave in everything.
I know you will.
About devotion, and there's like this element of almost like worship. And I feel like worship, especially when we're talking about sacred sexuality, is this state of loving what is, which is actually what I describe Tantra as. And allowing and holding someone in their full human experience. And so devotion for myself looks like a lot of patience and perseverance. Devotion to someone else looks like not trying to force them to be what I want them to be. And I wanted to just speak to that a little bit because you had mentioned, women and how they treat their men. And this is just, everything's intertwined, all of these conversations.
Sure.
And so a lot of it's just like, well, can you also just see, can you be in devotion to your man? Can you not want to please him and also not want to change him? And still hold a tone. To me, devotion is like, I'm going to worship you because I want the best for you. I see the best in you. And I trust you to like take the energy that I am trying to put forth to you, like in any kind of support, especially in the feminine. I think we want our people to grow and change and expand. And we're kind of the pokers of the planet that are like, let's do it. Like, just try.
Take my hand, I'll pull you out of the hole.
Exactly. Yeah. And to take that and to be like, hear my excitement in what I see for you in the future, but then like own that and go on your own path. And as women, can we let go? I think a lot of us have learned control. And this is the control of like forcing, or we're going to force someone to change and we're only going to like them if they do it our way. And I've noticed in my deep feminine surrender journey that, especially with my male friends, I just have to be like, girl, let them do it their way. Like, why do I think that their way is worse or better than mine? And can I just sit back and allow? So there's a lot of allowing, I also feel like, in devotion and to ourselves and other relationships. And so that also links to this devotion of the uncovering of our sexual energy, our armor, and these deep, profound realms that are kind of difficult to speak about because words just don't even really do it justice. And I think there was such like a rush to this because it's so different than anything that's out there. And I do think there's a lot of people in my circles that have done a lot of the work, but they still feel stuck. And so this is where I've really realized, because I've been a coach before, and sometimes I'm just like watching my clients just like, no matter how much we process and talk and even give them tools and give them support, they just seem to loop right back into like the bad behavior. I'm not saying that. That's their own judgment. This is why they're working on it, right? Like they dislike this behavior, so we're working on it. And I sat back, and now that I'm doing this deeper energetic work, I'm like, aha, this is something that's like deeply stuck in the somatic body. And no matter how much processing we do in the mind, the body hasn't caught up yet with actually what's real and with the safety and the truth of the moment. So how do we hold that and how do we excavate it? So I think one of the reasons it was so popular was that my circle is already people that are advancing and feeling stuck and kind of looking for that deeper thing. I wouldn't recommend like lead de-armoring with a practitioner unless you've done some pretty intense like somatic work, some reprogramming work, deep work in that way, and you're still looking for something if you feel stuck.
Yeah, and you've already cultivated deep safety in your body.
And honestly, if anything, you should go on a de-armoring journey on your own before you reach out to a practitioner, because the amount of my schooling that was me being schooled, like with my own body, was probably the most profound thing about my de-armoring training. I was blown away. So let me take a pause here with my story to explain what de-armoring is.
Yes, please.
So, and yes, you said yoni de-armoring. There also is lingam de-armoring, cock and pussy. I also use those words. And de-armoring, but it doesn't have to deal with the genitals. So I'm also going to pin that and come back to why the genitals matter. But de-armoring is a process of allowing the body's wisdom to speak, the body's intelligence to speak under deep regulation and safety. So when the body is feeling incredibly held, incredibly safe, incredibly protected, then a lot of times something will come up, and this happens with people that I work with. An emotion arises. They start to get really emotional. Maybe a memory pops up. I encourage my clients, if they feel like sharing, like I'm like, nothing is on accident when we get you into this state. So if something comes up, it means your body wants to take time to put a little spotlight on it and to give it its moment. It's ready to metabolize whatever it is, the harm, the unsafety that created this armor. And armor can be anywhere. It could be in your lips. It could be in your left ear. It could land in your belly. It can land in your feet. It just so happens that because of the beings that we are, so when our cells split, when we're like literally being created, the esophageal line is what's created first. So my throat to my asshole. It's the very first thing that actually forms. And then the things that form around that, the first bony structures, are the jaw and the pelvis. And then everything is created around that. So it is literally, I say, the esophageal line is like the path to God. It's literally like where we started from. It's where our existence, where creation started. So it's important to know that those are deeply connected. And it's important to understand that, and this is knowledge information I received. I'm always open to it not being correct, but I believe that our root chakra is being also formed in the first 7 years of our existence on this planet. So, and as if you know anything about psychology, things that happen to you between 0 to 7 deeply impact your belief system, your personality, how you see the world, the projections and stories you tell yourself. So it not only is developmentally, like that phase of life is deeply, there's a word I'm trying to come up with, it's not coming, but deeply influencing the way our brains. Imprinted in our brains, but then it's also deeply imprinted in our bodies, and it usually lands in our pelvis. So that's why de-armoring, a lot of times there's this desire to eventually like work with the pelvis internally, because it's the portal of creation. It's the portal of other worlds. And this is where my work starts to get really like esoteric, and I can't really explain it, because the things that happen when someone trusts me enough to go on that journey with them, which I do not take for granted. It's a deep honor, profound sacredness. When I am like at the temple gates between someone's legs, like I am in deep honor. Like I'm in deep honor that I'm there. I'm in deep honor of the genitals. I'm in deep honor of what it takes to have the body open itself to be entered, especially in a way that's more clinical or platonic. And then to journey there and help bring people's awareness to what's deeply held in the pelvic bowl, and what can be released when we're there is just like kind of beyond what I can explain. And so de-armoring is an entire process basically of allowing the body to on its own timeline, bring up the things it's ready to deal with and ready to metabolize. And then in my work specifically, I am there to hold the space as a neutral tone so that we can imprint back into safety. Like, I don't run away. I'm right here with you. It can get really ugly and weird and crazy. You can ask me to do all sorts of things, and I will probably be a yes, because the body also knows how to help you alchemize it. The body will know what you need to do to like somatically meet whatever it is that's coming up for you. And then I also bring pleasure in. So de-armoring work usually is deeply steeped in this body, voice, and choice, and exploring with the client what actually makes them feel good. So if you're doing this on your own, you need to start with a practice of just what makes you feel good, and start a self-massage, self-touch practice. Your face, your body, the erogenous zones are all over the body. Even your armpit can be like highly sensational. There's these areas of the body that can be really pleasurable. And you can start to play with, what does that feel like? Maybe one day you have a headache and maybe your lips are really pleasurable. What does it feel like to pull that pleasure, literally like pull it up into this part of your body that feels in pain or is struggling, and start to see the medicine of pleasure. And Western medicine doesn't want us to know about this. Like, heaven forbid, we actually talk about turn on and how powerful it is with healing. I think every woman should be encouraged to like pleasure herself before she gets a pap smear, so that she's actually aroused before we shove a speculum up in her. The amount of medical trauma I deal with in yoni de-arming is insane. But again, heaven forbid we actually allow pleasure to cross paths with the medicine world. But let me just tell you, everyone, like, pleasure is the deepest medicine that we can have. And I've literally seen, I've witnessed, I've brought clit pleasure up into a C-section scar and watched that scar go from like completely numb and offline to like 90% back online. I've watched how pleasure can literally reconnect our body again, not only into a space of safety, but deep joy, because this is our birthright. So it's not just excavating. I think a lot of spiritual excavation leaves us like with a gaping wound.
Yeah, and just tired.
Yeah. Like, where's the integration?
We're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a practice of deep safety, letting the body speak and bring things up, and then replenishing that or connecting. Sometimes if something's offline, I'll be stimulating a pleasurable area and stimulating the offline area like at the same time. And that can also make the brain make that connection back to pleasure. So start there with just like your external body. And then if you want to start exploring genital de-armoring, it's kind of the same practice, but now it's a much smaller area of the body that needs you to tune in and go very, very slow. Like spending 5 minutes to explore just your left labia. Like what is it on the outside? How does it feel if you just stroke down? This is wild. Try this out at home. What happens if you just stroke down? And then what if you just stroke up? And like notice the difference in your body. And then literally like go to like the inside flap, right? Like between your outer labia and your inner labia, and then stroke her up and then stroke her down. Or just presence and hold and just like move little micro amounts. And this is the same thing you can de-arm or cock as well. So you're just like exploring with like minute detail all of the parts of your external genitalia and seeing what lives there. And basically, if you ever get to internal pelvic work on your own or with a practitioner, it will become very obvious. And usually armor, we're going to work on that outside in. So we're not going to go straight for the inner pelvic work right away. We're going to make sure and try to see if other armor that's sitting in more external places wants to be tended to first. And then the body will just open itself and be like, now let's go explore inside. So yeah, it's a really profound medicine. Like I said, I was floored actually listening to my body. She didn't want to be penetrated in my program almost the whole time I was in there. There was so much presencing my vulva wanted. There was so much time spent just like loving on it. There's something about my left vulva side specifically that holds just like a bunch of armor and tension. It actually kind of feels a little pinchy and weird. But then like the more I work, she actually just gets more pleasurable. And there was just a lot happening in my external genitalia. And I also unlocked an ability to like squirt all over without even penetrating myself. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like I was just like, I don't know what just happened, but hell yeah. Like it felt so good. Yeah. And that was after I had cried my eyes out because this is the sweet, deep thing about de-armoring is the moment you find armor, here comes all of the emotions, all of the grief, all of the sadness. And sometimes I don't know why. Yeah. And I'm just there with it. And I'm just like cradling myself and allowing the release and just like whatever it is that my body wants to do in that moment. And just mostly as I'm cradling myself, a lot of it's usually inner child work. That's the moment where my now adult self pictures me cradling my baby girl self and it's just like, I'm sorry that you ever were meant to feel this way. I'm sorry you were abandoned. I'm sorry you were left alone in your fear. I'm sorry that your sex was weaponized even before you even knew what that was. You know, just like so many layers of grief. And I would just like cry and cry and cry and just kind of be presencing. Like I'm literally holding my vulva right now, like just crying and presencing and holding and allowing. And then suddenly pleasure was just this like, just like this huge wave. And like I said, I've unlocked new ways to pleasure myself. And I've just unlocked this deep tenderness. For those of you that are interested in this, there are specific, like I have a pretty deep cervix and a lot of us have cervical armor. A ton of us have cervical armor. I find that tends to be deep generational trauma, but it's also birth trauma. It can also be lots of things. Just the cervix. The cervix is the heart, directly related to our heart. So any kind of armor we have on our heart, it will usually show up on the cervix. And so a lot of times it's hard to explore your cervix. Obviously, like bend your knees and crouch as much as you can. But if you can't find it, they have these specific de-armoring wands that are made to make it really ergonomic to like, it's like this crazy handled situation. But it makes it able for you to really get in there and presence with your cervix. And I've probably for the last several months, I've had a really beautiful experience where I'm also just like sobbing, like presencing with the wand. Like obviously if it was your hand, you'd just be in there kind of just holding. So presencing is just the art of literally just like not moving and just holding ourselves and just allowing. And then sometimes the session is complete, or sometimes at that point, like I said, then suddenly as that softens and I allow it, then my turn on comes on. And then I'm like, oh, well, now I'm just going to keep diving into this pleasure, because this is what I've been watching with myself and others, is this reprogramming back into pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also how we expand our states of pleasure.
Yeah.
So the healing is beautiful, and the healing gets us to these expanded spaces where we can have extended lovemaking, where we can, like, I think, like, astro project. Like, this is when you're making love to yourself and with others, and you're just like both now a different entity in like some different world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can't really explain that. And to me, that is the medicina, like that is what we're trying to like feel and understand, is how expansive and how endless we truly are. And to be able to dissolve into that like liminal space is some other kind of pleasure as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, hopefully that explains and answers a lot of what you brought up. Thanks for listening to all of that.
No, I love it. I love it. It's exactly the process I'm going through in my Tantra training right now, is presencing. And it's interesting in conversation with so many people. I was going to say women, but it's men and women, how much disassociation there is and how much disconnection from your body. They'll do this body scan meditation, and it's like, I can't even, like some people, I can't even feel my toes. And I can't even feel, it's like, okay, well, what does numbness feel like then? Yeah. Like, okay, a lot of us are numb. So what does numbness feel like? What does numbness have for you to say? And they have you do the same thing, put your, in the body scan meditation, put your hands on your pussy and talk to it. And every time I talk to mine, she's like, slow down. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I know. So
she knows what's up. You know what I'm saying?
She does. And when I do, it's like, even when I take a phone call that I know I'm like tired and I'm like taking this bath and I'm like, oh, I promised this person I'd call them. And it's like, I want to be accountable. It's like, but I'm being more accountable to them than I am to me. Yeah. And like saying yes when I mean no. And then just feeling like how icky that phone call feels in my body. And then afterwards, she's like, I told you you shouldn't have done that. Look how tired you are now. You feel emotionally exhausted. You feel drained. And I'm like, yeah, I know, next time I'm going to listen. I'm understanding. I'm like learning to have this conversation with her, and like being in communion with her, being in communication, like, okay, I did not listen and I regret not listening, and next time I will listen. Yeah. And it's so beautiful. I just think this work is so powerful. And like you said, it kind of calls you, right? Like it calls you to be, it's such a sacred, tender, and I just really want to honor your work and your integrity, because it isn't something that's like, oh, I just want to be like a sex worker or a sex coach or a sex intimacy coach or body worker. Like, intimacy is one of the scariest things that humans can feel. Love, scared of our sexuality, scared of, all these walls. Like, hardly anyone doesn't have any walls around their heart, because our world just requires that you have some armor sometimes. And I think what I'm learning is, like, yes, when I go out into the world and I'm going to be going wherever, like, there is some level of protection that I get to choose to put on. And it's very different than when I'm with myself, masking to myself, lying to myself. Like, I think that's like kind of the big process that's like been coming to me as we've been talking, is like, it's okay to have armor, and sometimes it's needed. Like, if I'm going to go to a protest rally, I'm going to be aware and protect myself and energetically put a little bubble. I'm not going to just, have this open heart. And you can, but then when I'm home with myself, sometimes I still have that, sometimes I still have that like mask of lying to myself and pretend like, oh, that was okay. That was okay that we did that. And it's like, no, it wasn't. It wasn't okay that we did that. Your body feels that it wasn't okay. Don't lie to yourself and tell your body that it was okay, because she knows that it wasn't. And be honest with her, so she can have a better, more trusting relationship with you and talk to you more. Yeah. And so I just think that's so beautiful. Where can people find you? I know you've got a lot of stuff coming up, which I'm so excited about. I want to do your DRIPP training class in May. So I know you have a DRIPP training class in May. And also, what I love about Jen is she does sensuality classes for men too, which for any of you who've watched my story about, my ex-husband and just like a lot of the men I work with, like men need the safe space to wear stockings, to feel textures, to like be in their primal, to be in their body. And I love that you're like working on offering those classes to men too. And I know Chad's really excited about it as well. So there's, you have a lot of things, but I'll just let you share like what's coming up in the next couple months and where can people find you?
Amazing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first I'll start virtually. So I have a community online that I teach virtual classes on and host all kinds of offerings, weekly offerings. I also usually do a self-led de-armoring and sister circles and drip practices. So especially if you're not local, or don't want to like fly me to where you live, I would start there. And then in mid-May here in Utah, I will be hosting a drip retreat that may end up looking co-ed because that's where I'm at with all of this right now. Drip is wanting to expand and to initiate the men and to have the bridging of the gaps between us and starting to be in spaces together, because that's really where I think another next layer of healing is going to happen. So that's the 14th through the 19th. It's a retreat plus a practicum. So the practicum is 2 days in-person learning, basically the drip methodology. And I have if you sign up for that, you'll get access to the actual training, which is a whole, like a 30-hour module that breaks down the philosophy. It breaks down chakra healing. It breaks down trauma. It breaks down pleasure anatomy. It's a whole ass course in itself. And then the practicum is like the brass tacks of how I put together a class, essentially. And I basically call it a training for practitioners who hold sacred and intimate spaces. Because even if you don't want to teach the somatic practice, I feel like I do have a really deep desire to hold a ton of integrity in this space. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people running amok in these spaces. And so as a facilitator and a trainer, I want to find facilitators and people who have a deep desire to do this work with deep honor and deep integrity. And to understand that you are putting yourself in a power dynamic and what that means and how you hold that consent really cleanly. So that's what's going on in May. And I'll actually be back in Utah May and June. I'm kind of finding out how to live between there and Northern California. I live in Northern Cali and am available for all kinds of in-person work. So you can go to drippractice.com for all the drippy things. That's DRIPPRACTICE. So the second P in drip is practice. Drippractice.com, drip practice on Instagram, and then my personal Instagram is strong and sultry. That's all spelled out. So if you want to connect with me, kind of separate from drip, and work with me one-on-one, my de-armoring work, I also do all kinds of coaching from literal fitness and holistic movement coaching to relationship coaching and intimacy coaching. So if you want to reach out and work with me one-on-one, you can just like find me and DM me and email me. I actually think on my link in bio on Strong and Sultry, there's a little like questionnaire you can answer and like give me your information, and then I'll reach out and contact you.
Yeah, and we'll add all the links in the show notes so they're easy to find.
Yay.
And we just have one last question that we like to end every session with, which is, what advice would you give to your younger self to give you hope in love?
I feel like I would tell her to continue to trust that inner voice. I abandoned that in my early teens, and I think I actually really knew what the fuck like I was about and who I was, and I was afraid of disappointing. I was afraid the world was telling me that what I was feeling and thinking was crazy, and I think I would arrive to her and just be like, there's nothing crazy at all about how you feel, how you see the world, who you are. And if you want to have the best love of your life, which I kind of feel like is happening to me right now with my communities and people in the world, is to be authentic and be 1,000% myself, and to chase that and to not be afraid of what other people think of me, because in the beautiful words of Dr. Seuss, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind.
I love me some Dr. Seuss. What a great way to end it. Thank you. And remember, everyone, be brave. Love is worth it. Thank you.